First candidate, Kimo Freeman is an award-winning playwright, activist, author, and political commentator. The catalog for philanthropy honored him with the 2022 Changemakers. He is a co-founder of WEAC Radio, recognized as DC's best social justice station in 2017 by the Washington City paper, and first place of the 2017 Public Media Journalists Association Award. Let's give Kimo Freeman a hand.
Next up is Trent Holbrook. Trent Holbrook is running for Congress as the only candidate with a record of leadership and success on the legislative priorities for the including a senior legislative council where he led progress on D.C. statehood, home rule, and issues facing federal employees. Please welcome Trent Holbrook.
Next up is Greg Jackso. Greg is the son of an immigrant, raised with a deep respect for American ideals and public service. As chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission under President Barack Obama, he was a champion for workers and the public good. He is also a congressional veteran, as senior advisor to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, from whom he learned to fight, and then Rep. Ed Markey, who challenged him to make policy in the best interest of the people. Greg is a lecturer at Princeton University, working with and inspiring the next generation of leaders with fellowships in D.C. He is also a renewable energy developer. Greg Jackson, everyone.
Next up, Brooke Pinto. Brooke Pinto is a dedicated public servant running for Congress in Washington, D.C. as an attorney and elected official. Brooke has served D.C. residents her entire career, first at the D.C. Office of the Attorney General, then as the Ward 2 council member and chairwoman of the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. In the D.C. Office of Attorney General, Brooke served as the Assistant Attorney General for Policy and Legislative Affairs and as an Assistant Attorney General in the Tax and Finance section, representing the interests of the District of Columbia and its residents. Please welcome Brooke Pinto.
Next up, Robert White. Robert White Jr. is a fifth-generation Washingtonian who grew up in the Petworth neighborhood. He graduated from Archbishop Carroll High School and earned degrees in philosophy and political science from St. Mary's College of Maryland. He also completed additional studies at Oxford University in England and in the Gambia, West Africa. He later earned his law degree from American University's Washington College of Law. In 2008, Robert began his public service career in the United States Congress as legislative counsel to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. In that role, he worked on congressional oversight of the district and helped draft legislation aimed at expanding DC's autonomy and reducing congressional interference in local governance. Robert White, everyone.
And next up, last but not least, is Kenny Zalesny. Kenny Zalesny is a respected leader across the government, business, and nonprofit sectors, and a mom of 4. She's running to represent Washington, D.C. in Congress. A 30-year resident of D.C., Kenny served in the Clinton White House as counsel to the U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno, as president of a nonprofit that helped thousands of D.C. students become the first in their family to go to college, as co-head of corporate strategy at Microsoft, as deputy national finance director at the DNC, and as national co-chair of Women for Kamala Harris. Please welcome Kenny Zalesny. And now we'll allow each candidate 90 seconds for an opening statement. Each candidate will give that statement in alphabetical order, and of course we'll be timing you very closely for this. Let's start with, come on, Freeman.
Good evening.
Good evening.
There's a lot left off on that bio there, brothers. You know, should we start there. I want to point out the fact that, for those who don't know me, I founded a festival called the Black Love Festival in 1997. It was the largest AIDS mobilization in the city for 6 years. And why was that? Because DC had the highest AIDS infection rate, 12 times the national AIDS infection rate. And that's due because of lack of statehood. We was the only jurisdiction in the country that was denied using our own money, not federal funds, our own money, for funding needle exchange programs, which was directly responsible for over 30% of all new AIDS infection cases. And we created an event that tested more people on any calendar day than the Department of Health for 6 straight years in response to that. That is how crucial statehood is. But the average wait time at a red light, for those who don't know, is 75 seconds. How long do you think the average person will wait at a red light before running it, knowing it's never going to change? Think about a number in your head right now. The data has been proven that 5 minutes, in addition to the 75 seconds, people will wait when something is wrong and before they run the light. We've been waiting for statehood for far too long, and it's time for us to implement our rights. We should not be paying federal income taxes in the absence of DC statehood.
Time. All right, Mr. Jackson. Next.
I think it's me.
Alphabetical order.
Oh, that would still be me.
I apologize.
I'm never first alphabetically, so it's fine.
Mr. Holbrook.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting this event, and thank you to the audience for being here. I'm Trent Holbrook, and for the past 8 years, I was on the front lines of every single major federal fight for DC's future, fighting side by side with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, including while serving as her senior legislative counsel. When I started working for Congresswoman Norton, the DC statehood bill had been voted on only once in American history, in 1993, and it failed 2-1. They lost half the Democrats on the vote. I worked to make DC statehood the national issue that it is and that it deserves to be. We got over 100 national organizations to endorse the bill. I worked with those organizations, with DC residents, and with others, and we got a record number of co-sponsors on the bill. We took the bill from losing 2-1 to passing in the U.S. House of Representatives for the very first time. And we did it not once, but twice. And the second time, every single House Democrat voted yes for statehood. I've been the leader in Congress defending and advancing DC home rule. DC is under greater attack now than at any time since at least the 1990s, and probably since enactment of the Home Rule Act in 1973. But there's a reason, and it's because we're so very close to achieving statehood. It's because we put in the work and we made the advances towards statehood, and now we're knocking on the door of equality for all of our residents in a way that we never have before. I fought with Congresswoman Norton against the illegal use of National Guard troops in our streets, and led the effort for the House to pass the District of Columbia National Guard Home Rule Act to give the mayor the authority over the National Guard, not the president. I've also worked on federal employee issues and have been an employee in the executive branch of the federal government.
Out of time.
Thank you.
Greg Jacksko.
Hi, my name is Greg Yatsko. I came to Washington 27 years ago after finishing a doctorate in physics. I came here because I wanted to work in public policy. I started on Capitol Hill as a Congressional Science Fellow, learning all about Congress. And as I joke to people, the last time I'd taken any class about public policy was probably watching a Saturday morning cartoon. But I quickly learned how to be effective in Washington, D.C. I then worked for Senator Harry Reid, the senior senator from Nevada and one of the leaders in the Democratic caucus, and eventually rose to the chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Since I left government, I've been very focused on education and working in the private sector to advance renewable energy. The reason I'm running today is because I think it's very important that we push back on the abuses of the Trump administration. The Trump administration has abused the rule of law. The Trump administration and Trump personally have abused federal workers, and they've abused the district. And I didn't see a strong enough response coming from the Congress, from both parties, quite frankly. So I decided to run to be able to put a stop to the abuses of Donald Trump and to fight for DC statehood. And as I've learned more about that issue and talked to voters, I also agree that we should not be paying federal income taxes until we achieve statehood. That will be one of the key parts of my platform as I become delegate in June. Thank you.
Brooke Pinto.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brooke Pinto, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to all of the amazing organizers and our esteemed moderators for holding us together this evening and organizing. I am running to be our congressional delegate to do three things for our city. First, I want to ensure that every district resident has the opportunity for economic prosperity. That's why I've rolled out a bold, affordable housing plan to do everything from making rent tax deductible to having extended homeownership credits for renters, to repeal the Federal HIDE Act to allow us to build higher and denser and build more housing by and above metro stations to ensure that we can provide opportunity for everyone to afford to live in our city. Second, I want to make sure everybody is safe in our city. And third, I want to ensure that we have autonomy and become the 51st state. I have worked in the Senate for Senator Blumenthal. I have worked at the Attorney General's office for Attorney General Carl Racine. When I was 27 years old, I decided to run for the DC Council to solve problems, to support our small businesses, and to have integrity in government. I've been reelected 3 times since then. I was the youngest member of the DC Council in our history. And I am so proud of what we can accomplish as a city together in this moment, because we have to send a fighter to the Hill who can accomplish real wins to protect our city and fight for the future of opportunity for every resident.
Next is Robert White.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting. Thank you to our moderators. I'm at-large council member Robert White. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian who grew up in D.C. like a lot of Washingtonians in the 80s and 90s, in a family that struggled to make it day after day, year after year, and generation after generation. I had the opportunity to go to college and then to law school, and then found that the best thing I could do with my legal career was to give back to my city. So I took an unexpected turn to Congress to work for Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, working on everything from economic development projects in our city to voting rights to our budget. But after 5 years there, leaving the Capitol and going back home to Southeast, I couldn't bear anymore the fact that when I left the Capitol and went to Southeast, my neighborhood didn't look any different than it did in the worst days in the 80s and 90s. So I did the wildest thing. I quit my job and ran for the DC Council to be a voice for people like my family and communities like my community. I fought hard in this position, and no secret in the city, my plan this time last year was not to run for the delegacy, but to run for mayor. But late last summer, it became uncomfortably clear that the agenda to overtake DC's home rule is one that's going to be relentless. It also became clear that our fighter on the Hill was going to retire, and we need someone who knows that seat and knows this city on day one, fighting that fight. We can't afford to elect someone who is learning the seat. We can't afford to elect someone who is learning the city. We need someone who has a track record of fighting, who knows this city and who loves this city. I love this city and I know this city, and that is why I'm asking for your vote to be our next congressional delegate. Thank you.
Candidate Zelezny.
Good evening. I'm Kenny Zelezny. I'm running for Congress because Trump is crushing us, and we need an experienced national fighter who knows how to push back. As Kojo said, and I loved hearing it in his voice, I've lived in this city for 30 years. I raised 4 kids here. I'm a Harvard-trained lawyer. I worked in the White House. I was counsel to the U.S. Attorney General. I ran a nonprofit based in Adams Morgan that helped thousands of D.C. kids become the first in their families to go to college, many of them here. I ran the strategy team at Microsoft. And in this last presidential cycle, I was a deputy national finance chair at the DNC and co-chair of Women for Kamala Harris. In all of those jobs, I had the privilege to fight for DC and win on the national stage. At DOJ, I helped beat back the Republican efforts to kill after-school programs and other crime prevention programs that when we got them passed, they brought crime down in this city farther and faster than ever in history. At the White House, I fought to make sure that every school and library, especially in Ward 7 and 8, were wired for the internet. And at my college access nonprofit, we helped drive the college enrollment rate in this city up from under 40% to over 60%. And Barack Obama rewarded our success and our results with a big portion of his Nobel Peace Prize money. I think this office, this race, is a once-in-a-generation chance to take a fresh look at the delegate role and what kind of relationships and experiences it requires, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Now it's time to get to questions and hopefully answers. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to a question and 30 seconds for any rebuttals. It is likely that there are going to be rebuttals, but the notion that the candidate who gets to speak for the longest period of time is necessarily going to win both the debate and the race has turned out to be not true on a number of occasions. So please keep that in mind as you respond to these questions. As I said, 60 seconds to respond and 30 seconds for any rebuttals. I think I'd like to start in reverse order by starting with Kenny Zalesny. What is your strategy for advancing DC statehood in Congress?
It's a three-part strategy. First, we need a marketing campaign in this city that galvanizes support among DC, that steps up support among DC residents and educates the 30 million tourists who come here every year. And so we should have on the sides of our buses and on the walls of Union Station and in our airports, it should say, "Welcome to DC, we're the last colony," or whatever it takes to educate more Americans. Next, we need to broaden our coalition across the Democratic Party. That's in the DNC, in the House leadership, in the Senate leadership, and rank and file across both parties. There are allies and partners for this issue who we have left on the table. And then the third step is we need to pick off some Republicans, because we will need a grand bargain to overcome the filibuster. So education campaign to galvanize support here, teach and to educate and enlist the allies across the country in our own party, and then pick off the Republicans.
60 seconds?
Yes, sir.
Look, I'm going to seize on this unique historic moment. 5 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. 50 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. But right now, because of Republicans and Trump, there are redistricting battles happening across the nation, and everyone across the nation is aware of it, regardless of whether you live in one of those states that's going through redistricting. That's because this is a fight about congressional power and the future of democracy. DC becoming a state would mean 2 Democratic senators and would push our agenda further than any of these redistricting battles. I'm going to raise this to top priority for our national Democratic leaders. I'm also going to help mobilize DC residents by the thousands into our swing states and swing districts to ensure that we are electing people who respect DC and that will help us get DC statehood over the finish line. I believe that this is our time, and the fight that Trump and the congressional Republicans picked is one that we are going to finish by making DC a state.
Brooke Pinto.
So position of the Democratic Party platform nationwide. I just spoke to Ken Martin about this last week. This is why this needs to be a mission among all of our stakeholders. I just met with all of the DC Young Democrats chapters, ensuring this is the #1 priority on their policy platform. I want to do what Walter Fauntroy, who held this position first, did so well, of going around the country and making sure that Americans understand that it is an American interest to have Washington, D.C. be the 51st state. I also want to note something. We only spend $200,000 in our entire $20 billion budget locally on advancing DC statehood with our own delegation. And we need to take seriously the positions of our shadow representative, our shadow senators, to ensure that we make the case effectively.
Greg Yasko.
So as I talk to voters about statehood, there's an apathy around it. And one of the comments that I've heard from so many people is, you know what, I don't think we're ever going to get statehood, but why don't we just not pay federal income taxes? And that showed me 2 very important things. Number one, that while DC statehood polls incredibly well, almost everybody in the district supports statehood, the action is not there to support it, which is why I support exempting DC residents. And if we have to, ultimately, as an act of civil disobedience, denying federal taxes to the federal government, so that we can mobilize the population here and have an actionable item that we can take across the country to explain the issue of DC statehood. Because we live the lack of representation every day, but people across the country don't understand that. But they will understand when we're not paying federal income taxes, why we are different, and we will use that then to ultimately make progress and get the support we need from both Republicans and Democrats to get statehood for DC.
Education. Education is the most important issue on the DC statehood fight, I think, because so many people do not know what DC is. They don't realize that we are 700,000 residents, that we pay more taxes per capita than any state in the country. We contribute more to the federal government than almost half the states. We worked in Congressman Norton's office to get over 100 national organizations to endorse the DC statehood bill, and that was tremendous in moving the DC efforts, the DC statehood efforts, because we worked with those organizations. Those organizations also lobbied their members of Congress, and they talked to their affiliate organizations throughout the states, and by doing that, we made it a national issue, and we got all the Democratic members to care about this issue. We took the bill from losing 2-1 in 1993 to having every single House Democrat vote yes on statehood. So I have the history and record of success of making this a national issue and bringing in true success to this critically important issue, making it front and center.
Come on, Freeman.
Present company included, no disrespect, but I think it's utterly ridiculous and borderline disrespectful to assume that you're going to be able to bring DC statehood when Eleanor Holmes Norton couldn't do it in the 4 decades of her efforts. You somehow going to do something that she was unable to do and countless others were unable to do. And the closest she ever came was when the first 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency, when he had the House, the Senate, and the White House, and this wasn't even on the menu. Because like Malcolm X said, we keep putting them first, they keep putting us last. So you heard this, we pay more federal income taxes than anybody else in America, but did you not know that we are the only U.S. territory that pays federal taxes at all? It's time to end taxation by representation. This is our time, this is our moment. The definition of insanity is doing the same exact thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. They are not going to be able to do what Eleanor Holmes Norton couldn't do for 37 years.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question and ask you each to use 30 seconds to respond to it. And I'll start with Brooke Pinto, and then we'll go left and right. I'm starting with you because you mentioned our shadow or statehood senators and member of Congress, who most people, I suspect, in Washington don't even know exist. What would you do to empower the people who hold those positions?
Well, first we need to increase the budget that we spend on advancing DC statehood, which includes the budget of their offices, which are minuscule. Empower them to have real offices with staff who are committed to mobilizing this effort in DC and across the country in a way that they are not empowered to do right now.
Robert White.
Well, look, I don't have a ton of disagreements with Congresswoman Norton, but one place I think one thing she didn't do was utilize the shadow reps. These are people who are committed to advancing statehood and DC autonomy. We have to help them help us mobilize people. We're going to be better off without them, by using them. The other thing I would say is that as much as can I rebut later? You said I get 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Well, we'll have to decide on that after we go through this round. First, you, Kenny Zelesny.
I am proud to say that I've been endorsed by our once and future shadow rep, Franklin Garcia. He was our shadow rep. He's running again unopposed. I have gotten to know the shadow rep and the shadow senators quite well. I think they each have different strengths and different interests, the way they approach the job. As delegate, I would be delighted to be the captain of that team, to pull them together, to elevate the different strengths they have, to be a team. And I agree, Robert, that was not a tremendous strength of our current delegates, but it's something I would prioritize. They're great resources, and we can do a lot for the city as a team.
Greg Yasko.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm not sure that is the most effective strategy for anything that we're going to do towards statehood. I think there's tremendous confusion about the role of the shadow delegate. There's confusion about the role of this seat, partially because of the shadow Congress people, the shadow senators. So I think there's probably, quite frankly, better ways that we can advance statehood and not necessarily focus our time and effort on building up those positions to be recognizable. I think there are better ways we can do that, primarily focusing through the work of the delegate, because that is the role that actually has a seat in Congress and has the ability to interact with both the House and the Senate.
Trent Holbrook.
I largely agree. I've heard a lot of talk about how the delegate is supposed to travel around the country and make these great cases to the American public about DC. And we certainly should be traveling around the country and talking about DC, but that's not the way to do it. And that's not what the delegate role is. The delegate is in DC and they should be working with members of Congress. However, the shadow delegation over the last several years has been excellent at that. And that's what I would look to them to do and continue to keep doing that excellent work that they've been doing.
Come on, Freeman.
I disagree. I think that the shadow reps and the delegates should be traveling around the country wherever the voter disenfranchisement raises its ugly head. But I have to tell you that I think we also need political education here at home, because when I tell people I'm running for DC delegate, they say, what ward? So I don't think people really understand the roles of either the delegate or the shadow reps.
And I'll keep the rebuttal in mind for later, Robert White.
Okay, family, we're going to transition to higher education real quick, starting with candidate White, and we'll work our way down to our right here. And everybody gets 60 seconds, starting with candidate White once again. What would you do to protect free speech on college campuses? One more time. What would you do to protect free speech on college campuses?
Look, freedom of speech is in jeopardy, not just on college campuses, but everywhere, and we need to protect it everywhere. The norms of democracy right now in front of our eyes are going out of the window. When students or professors speak up and use their constitutional rights to do so, we can't be bashful in addressing it. We need members of Congress who are not going to be bashful and say, well, let me play footsie with the folks who are trying to tear people's rights down. We need to be at least as aggressive moving this country in the right direction as these folks have been moving us in the wrong direction. And I have a lot more that I want to say about higher education today and the importance of this seat with respect to higher education. So I hope we'll get to continue this important part of the conversation.
No doubt. Candidate Pinto.
Well, one of our greatest assets in Washington, D.C. is that we have such excellent colleges and universities filled up with tens of thousands of students who want to change the world and want to learn from each other. And a big part of that is to ensure they have the opportunity to communicate freely and safely and explore ideas. There's a reason our First Amendment is the First Amendment. It is foundational to who we are as a country, and that is always something that I have fought to protect throughout my career and will continue to fight to protect in partnership with our students, with our young people, and with our excellent universities, who I've always been a consistent partner with throughout my time on the council.
Candidate Yaxo.
So I've had the pleasure of teaching classes at Georgetown many years ago, and also teach and run a program here in DC with Princeton University. So I've seen firsthand the chilling effect that has happened on university campuses. And a big part of that, we have to be very clear, is the misuse by the Trump administration of federal funds and of the Justice Department. So a big element of the stifling of free speech on campus is happening because of the actions of this administration to take issues and twist those issues in a way that they can use to get in the middle of free speech on campus. Because fundamentally, the government should not be involved in free speech issues. The government should stay out of those issues. And I think that's what we're seeing too much, is the Trump administration is interfering and causing a chilling environment on many university campuses. And I will say, I think the university presidents have not done a good enough job standing up to that. And we've seen it sporadically, but not in a unified way. And that has, I think, had a significant consequence.
Candidate Holbrook.
I completely agree. We've seen way too much the attacks by this administration on professors, on free thought, on academia, and it has to stop. I worked with Congresswoman Norton for 8 years doing her work at the House Oversight Committee, and I think this would be a prime topic to have an oversight hearing on right at the beginning of the next Congress. Congresswoman Norton always said that this was a college town, and she was right. There's so many universities here, and that's to our great asset. And so I would look to have oversight of this administration and try to stop the incredible attacks we've seen over and over and over that are just uncalled for and that frankly are unconstitutional.
Candidate Freeman.
Yes, when I had the opportunity to spend time with Pulitzer Prize winner Allison Walker we was in Cuba, she told me that the greatest power is convincing people they don't have any. And I would want to empower the 80,000 college kids here in the District of Columbia to convince them to register to vote here so they'd be constituents, because they could flip the balance of the status quo here, because their votes in D.C. condensed will carry more weight than being diluted across 50 states. And I think that involving all of the law schools and these colleges to take on political prisoners' cases and pattern out the legacy work that was created right here at the David Clark Law School at UDC, my alma mater, I think that would get them invigorated to address freedom of speech. And I think that we need to utilize the resources that we have right here at home.
Candace Zelezny.
If we were a state, those 100,000 college students would register here. They don't, because they think their vote matters more where they came from. I have 4 kids. 3 of them are in college, and 1 of them is just out. I know that at that age especially, it is so important to be able to learn who you are by testing your ideas. And if you can't do that freely, you miss out on a huge part of social, emotional, and human development. So quite apart from First Amendment rights, I think it's critically important that we defend free speech of all sorts on campus. And then, of course, as a matter of the First Amendment, we need free speech at every age, in every context, in every setting, and without it, we are sliding down the road toward tyranny.
I'm walking on very shaky ground here, but Robert White, you indicated that you wanted to rebut something, and I'm assuming that that had to do with the DC statehood senators and statehood representatives.
Yes.
And if you can keep your rebuttal to 30 seconds, then maybe I'll let everybody else also rebut. But go ahead.
But if I go longer, you won't let them rebut?
If you go longer, we'll put you out.
All right. So, look, the idea of educating people who come to D.C. or nationally is a wonderful idea, and it's one that I fully agree with. But that won't get us across the finish line. That is an idea that we have tried. D.C. won't become a state because it's the right thing to do. If that were the case, it would have happened. D.C. will become a state when we help people understand why it is in their strategic or political interest. That's not how I want to get to statehood, but I'm going to get there by any means necessary. The reason Congresswoman Norton couldn't do it before is because the Republicans had not thrown the rule book in the fire, and now Democrats have to fight fire with fire.
You were responding to Brooke Pinto, so Brooke Pinto, you get to rebut the rebuttal.
I don't think he was responding to me, because I said a very similar thing.
I think he was responding to me.
And Trent and Kimon.
Because I'm the one who said we need an education campaign.
Finally, we're having a conversation.
You all rebutting?
About who we're responding. I would love to rebut that.
Because you said about any means necessary. Does it include tax resistance?
Not if it's going to make us
That's not Malcolm's quote.
I mean, it's not juggling either. So, only things that make sense.
I guess I'll go back to the program as it was intended.
Could I just comment on that, though?
Quickly.
So I do think that we have a national fight ahead, and we've had a national fight. And like I said, for the past 8 years, we've worked to get over 100 national organizations to endorse this bill. We are at 206 co-sponsors in the House right now, and we really are closer than ever to DC statehood. There are hurdles, but the hurdles are institutional. There are things like the filibuster, and they're especially because of things like President Trump. So we have laid the groundwork so the next time that we do have the Democratic trifecta, the presidency, the White House, the Senate, we're in an excellent position to get us past that finish line because of all that work that we've done.
You may include in the response to the next question, which is for each of you, and you have 60 seconds to respond to this, you may include something about this, because the question starting with you, Kimon Freeman, is how would you respond to congressional interference in DC's local laws and budget decisions?
I just want to say that we're talking about the fact that we can't even say DEI, and we somehow going to get them to grant us statehood. Now, in terms of interference, I mean, that's really calling the kettle black, because we have a DC council that often ignores the voting rights of the people right here in our city. You know, we have a bill right now with Initiative 83 that's laying incomplete for being funded because they don't want independents to vote in Democratic primaries. So when we talk about the federal intervention and interruption of self-determination, what about our own elected officials right here? Let's start at home. We got to clean our own house before we can deal with the enemies outside the house.
Okay, then you are next, Trent Holbrook.
So you have to fight every single one, and that's what I've done side by side with Congresswoman Norton for 8 years, is fighting every single attack, and we have seen these attacks increase exponentially in the last few years. Just as Congress alone, we have had over 100 bills, resolutions, amendments offered by members of Congress, not from DC, to overturn our laws, and we fought each and every one of them, and we largely were successful. And the reason is you have to make the case over and over and over what DC is. We're 700,000 people. There's no reason to interfere in our local laws, and we should be treated just like everybody else. We've seen this administration attack DC historically, unlike any other administration before. They tried to federalize our Metropolitan Police Department, which, by the way, was illegal. They have National Guard in our streets. We fought this every step of the way. But not only did we fight them working with Congresswoman Norton, but we used every single opportunity, every single attack to further advance the cause of home rule and further advance the cause of statehood. And so we did put in those fights, and Congresswoman Norton was right there every single day making those fights, and we were successful on them.
Greg Yasko.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not sure that there's a huge amount of difference here in our answers, but you have to fight all of the issues. You cannot win on all of the issues. I think that's quite clear. Obviously, the National Guard is in our streets. We have lost some budget authority this year. So it's important that this is the key area in which the delegate works very closely with the local DC government, with the council, and with the mayor to understand and prioritize which issues are most important to fight and to push back on. Of course, we want to stop all of them. And the only way we will really stop all of them is to achieve statehood. So that has to be the long-term goal, but in the short term, certainly it's looking at the appropriations process. It's looking at all of the procedures, utilizing all the aspects of the House rules to try and push back and stop all of these constant assaults on the district. But ultimately, we will only get there when we achieve statehood.
Brooke Pinto.
Well, first, I'd like to rebut Mr. Freeman's point about Initiative 83. I'm the one who moved the amendment to fully fund the initiative, taking money from my own priorities to make it as easy as a vote as possible for my colleagues. It did not pass, but I moved that amendment. On how we protect the district, let me say the same way that I have been doing in building coalitions. So last year, Congress tried to take $4 billion from our Medicaid allocation, would have eviscerated our hospitals. I went to the Hill. I think this position is really a quarterback position on behalf of the district. I went to the hospital CEOs, sent them to meetings with certain members who were most persuasive. I went to employers in Georgia and had them go to other members who were more persuasive. I went to people around this country to ensure that we beat back that $4 billion loss that would have cost Medicaid coverage for tens of thousands of our beneficiaries and got them to pull the recommendation. And so that's what this position is. It's building coalitions. It's being nimble and unique in how we're getting people to vote our way.
Robert White.
Look, there are two things. Last March, when Congress stole $1 billion from DC, I looked around and folks didn't know exactly what to do. And I remember my time on Capitol Hill working for Congresswoman Norton, and what she used to do every time something like this happens was pull together herself, the mayor, and the council chair for a united front, a press conference to set the narrative. That is what I got done. And if you go back and look at the press conference, you will see all those figures and me standing in the back, because leadership knows that sometimes you're in the front and sometimes you're in the back. But we also are not going to stop members of Congress from stepping on D.C. until there are consequences for them. We are going to bring D.C. residents by the thousands into the district of every Republican or Democrat who votes against D.C. so they know that when they do it, we will work against them to make sure they are no longer elected to Congress. The people in D.C. should only be held accountable to the people that they elect. The folks who have not elected them should never have a say in our budget or our laws. Your tax dollars should be spent the way that your elected officials say.
Kenny Zelesny.
I want to completely double down on what Kimon said. Neither of the members of DC Council in this race will be able to credibly argue for our autonomy. One of them voted against the referendum that overwhelmingly passed in this city for semi-open primaries. So when he had the chance to provide greater enfranchisement to DC voters, he declined to do it. And the other one, who voted for it, for all her talk of her vaunted coalition building skills, could not get 6 other DC Democrats to vote with her. Those are not the kind of positions or skills that are going to get us statehood or that are going to get us autonomy. You can't walk into a room with members of Congress and and broach the issue of autonomy or statehood if you didn't even give
15
DC
seconds.
voters the right when you had the chance, and you don't have the skill to bring 6 DC Democrats together to vote for your positions. That's not the kind of strength that's going to get us what we need.
Before we move on to the next question, Candidate White, do you care to rebut?
I definitely care to rebut. I want to make sure we get our facts right. I have never, ever voted to overturn a ballot initiative that the voters have passed, even when I didn't agree with the ballot initiative. What Kenny is referring to, and I'm not sure how in the weeds she's gotten with her research team, is a budget vote that would have us cut funding from another program to send to this. So it is insincere at best to say that I voted against or to overturn the will of the voters. It's just not true.
Can I rebut the rebuttal?
Well, I would actually, since you mentioned Candidate Pinto, I will allow her to rebut.
I'll do it for you, because we may be aligned on this piece. The first vote happened, and there were many very impassioned, dramatic speeches about the importance to honor the will of the voters and vote for the first piece of the ballot initiative,
You only
which
have 15
implemented
seconds.
ranked choice voting with the same funding sources. The second vote happened with the second piece, which would have enfranchised 83,000 residents to vote in our primaries, and that's the piece that he and other colleagues voted against.
The budget.
All right, many thanks. Next question. We are going to move on to civil rights, starting with Mr. Holbrook, and we'll work our way to my right, back around to Mr. Yaxo. How's that sound? Okay, perfect. How will your administration address civil rights and systemic inequities within the district? Mr. Holbrook.
Sure, that's a great question and something that's so critically important for the district. And I think the main thing that you need to do is you need to bring a broad coalition. We've talked a lot about having coalitions, and that's exactly what you do. You bring people to the table, you talk with them, and figure out what are the issues that have been going on in DC and what should be solved at the federal level. And one of the biggest things that I would fight for, too, is making sure that DC gets all the federal funding that it deserves. And so too often we see DC is not treated like a state. And so I would work with other people to make sure that that happens as well. And I just want to go back to some of the other conversation we've had about how are we going to advance DC, because it's related as well. We talk about coalition building. Like I said, we got over 100 national organizations to endorse the DC statehood bill, and we worked with those organizations over and over and over. They were the ones that really helped us also in the states to move our key priorities, whatever that priority might be, whether it's statehood or fighting for home rule. So if we wanted to talk about coalition building, I'm the one who's actually done it on these critically important issues for the District of Columbia in Congress.
Candidate Freeman.
I had the pleasure of serving on the Mayor's Office of Racial Equity Planning Committee. I was there at the press conference, the rollout of that office. It was a great effort to address the inequities in the city. Unfortunately, it's become a paper tiger, has sat there, hasn't gone anywhere. It was supposed to be applicable to every budget line item, it has not been that. Because the fact is, the average white family in this city has 81 times the wealth of the average black family in this city, and no one wants to address that. And the reality is, the median age income in this city is over $100,000. Raise your hand if you're in here and you make over $100,000. Anybody? I got 1, 2, 3, audience about what, 40 people, 50 people? Okay, so that means the rest of us, they ain't talking about us when we say the median income. And these are things that need to be addressed if we want to have anything close to racial equity justice in this city. My goal would be to empower the Office of Racial Equity.
Candace Leslie.
My entire career has been devoted to expanding access to justice and expanding opportunity. For 30 years in this city, I told you I ran a college access program that helped thousands of DC kids become the first in their families to go to college. And our insight was that there were so many kids across this city who could make it in college and weren't making it to college. And we reinvented and reimagined the college application process. And we transformed the lives of those students and their families and their neighborhoods. I fought to wire every school and library in Ward 7 and 8 to make sure that there wasn't a civil rights divide when it came to the last tech revolution, which was the internet. That's a, It's an untold story. The internet was almost the next civil rights divide, but we fought to make sure that if every school and library and every family had access to it, then there would be equal access. And that's what I've done my whole career, and I continue.
Candidate White.
Look, the district's delegate seat is a civil rights seat. It has always been. The person retiring is a civil rights icon, and we need someone who can grab that torch. I've been a civil rights fighter my entire career. In the role I am currently, I have literally expanded democracy, getting rid of the last element of Jim Crow at the ballot box, making D.C. the only jurisdiction in the nation to restore voting rights to all incarcerated people. In this seat, I have opposed practices like stop and frisk and pretrial detention, ideas that we can incarcerate ourselves out of a public safety epidemic. We need somebody in this seat who is a fighter, who won't cave to angry people when the time is convenient and then come back around and act like a civil rights icon when we're running for office. We need somebody who is going to be consistent, fighting for the right things and the right people, especially right now when the Supreme Court overturned the Voting Rights Act, which is going to result in the biggest loss of black representation in Congress since the end of Reconstruction. Right now, we need somebody who is really about civil rights.
Candidate Pinto.
Well, I think our lack of statehood is the gravest civil rights issue of America today, and we cannot allow for that injustice to continue. I agree, this is a civil rights seat. This is a seat that needs to harness what is our superpower in Washington, that we have the diversity and the strength lies in our diversity. We are a city that honors and cherishes our Black history, our Black residents. That's why I've fought to support Black minority businesses, to make sure that Black students have the same opportunities to learn to read as our white students, to address the Black maternal health crisis that we're in as a city and the life expectancy gaps across our city. And it's why we have to do more to prevent the displacement of tens of thousands of Black families that are being priced out of our city right now, which is why I have a housing plan, both locally and federally, to ensure that we're making housing more affordable for our residents and our Black residents to live here and grow old here.
Candidate Yaxel.
Yes, I would follow on some of those points that Brooke made, and I think a lot of these are big challenges. And one of the things that I've learned in all my time in government is that you have to focus on specific issues and you have to make specific progress. The issue of Black maternal health outcomes is one in which the district has made some progress. There's more work to do, certainly. And there are things that the federal government can do to ensure that postpartum care is available for 12 months and other things to ensure that the maternal health outcomes in Ward 8 are the same as they are in Ward 3. Another issue is again, the issue of displacement. And how do we address that? Well, there are simple things we can do that don't require legislative action that can be done at the federal level. One is to reinvigorate the special programs to provide credit that are based on historically disadvantaged communities. The Trump administration has made some efforts to try and erase the ability of that program to work, but there are ways to make it work. And those are two very specific things that I would work on that can be done at the administrative level, which I have experience on as a former federal agency head.
Next question. How should the federal government partner or not with DC to address public safety and reduce crime? I'll start at the other end with you, Kenny Zalesny.
In a normal and healthy functioning democracy, the federal government should absolutely partner with every state and local government to prevent crime and to prosecute offenders. When I was counsel to Attorney General Janet Reno, we worked very closely with every state and local jurisdiction, and especially DC. That's in normal times. These are not normal times. This administration has chosen to weaponize its federal agents to assault and terrorize our community, not to work with us to prevent crime and punish offenders. And it's been a disgrace. It's been a violation of human rights and civil rights.
15 seconds.
And we have to put an end to the collaboration between MPD and ICE. The National Guard doesn't belong here. We didn't invite them in. And I long for the days and will work to return to the days when a healthy federal government can work with a healthy local government and together achieve the outcomes we're after.
Robert White?
I haven't always been a buttoned-up, bald-head guy. There was a point in time when I was a young guy who drove a bucket because that's all I could afford, and I had long dreadlocks. And anytime I got pulled over or stopped by the police for minding my business, it left an impression with me. It made me less trustful of police. Now, when I became an adult and a lawyer and then a lawmaker, one of the things I understood was how important that trust is, how long it takes to build it, and how quickly it breaks down. What has happened with federal law enforcement in our city just in this past year and a half has broken the trust of our communities, and it's going to take us years to rebuild. Now, I know from experience that we have had decades under Democratic and Republican presidents where our local law enforcement worked cooperatively with federal law enforcement, and it was successful. It helped keep us safe. But it's going to take a lot of work for us to get back there. I think that all federal agencies should adhere to the same guidelines that MPD adheres to, because they do a better job than most police forces in protecting people and respecting their rights.
Brooke Pinto.
So in 2023, I became chair of the Council's Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, and we were experiencing one of the city's worst crime waves and emergencies we had ever been in. And I put together with the community the largest piece of legislation in our city's history called Secure DC, which had 100 different interventions in it around preventing crime before it happened, holding perpetrators of violent crime accountable, and improving our government coordination efforts, allowing for a daily public database so that every resident can see what was going on with their agencies. And we have driven down violent crime by 60%. This past year, President Trump, making up lies and vilification of our city, of our residents, made up an emergency in his head using fake numbers or numbers from several years ago before we drove those numbers down. It has been a travesty. It has led to shootings of our residents. That's why I moved a bill requiring transparency for serious use of force that happens in our streets, no matter which agent does them.
Greg?
So there's a lot of aspects to this issue, and clearly the federal government has a role to support states with resources. It should not be supplanting what should traditionally be the role of a state to provide law enforcement and public safety. And in the district, we have the added disadvantage that not only is the federal law enforcement interfering in the district, but we also have a judicial system that is primarily administered by the federal government. That is also an aspect of this problem that we need to address, because it manifests in very significant ways. The district attorney, the prosecutor for the district is a U.S. attorney who does not actively prosecute crimes in Ward 7 and Ward 8 sometimes. So you have a recurrence of people who are arrested who are not tried and released on the streets. That decreases the trust in the community. The other piece I'll quickly touch on, and this is a legacy of 9/11, is the militarization of our federal law enforcement. You know, there was a lot of discussion about the need for posse comitatus, which is a law that restricts the use of the military. Trump has gotten around that by essentially militarizing federal law enforcement and then deploying that federal law enforcement on our streets.
Trent Holbrook.
So there are over 24 federal police forces in the District of Columbia, and yet despite that, and despite the fact that crime in D.C. is at a generational low, the president lied about our crime statistics, lied about what was happening in D.C., and attempted illegally to federalize the Metropolitan Police Department. And because of that, and because that's not the way it should be under the idea of equity, and we should not be treated any differently than anybody else, we worked in Congressman Norton's office on the District of Columbia Police Home Rule Act, which would take away this authority from the president and make it where President Trump could never do it again. Also, we've seen National Guard in our streets in a way that you couldn't do anywhere else, which is also illegal, and we fought that every single day. And because of that, we worked on the District of Columbia National Guard Home Rule Act, which would give control over the National Guard from the president, take it from the president, and give it to the mayor, which is exactly where it belongs. And we used horrible opportunities in our past, like clearing of Lafayette Square on January 6th, to pass that bill, the District of Columbia National Guard Home Rule Act, through the House for the first time in U.S. history. And so every time we have an attack, we use it to advance D.C. causes, and that's what we need to continue to do.
Kamon Freeman.
Roland Martin says, I fear the police more than any thug. I've been in opposition to anything coming out of the White House because unlike Senator Tim Scott or even our former Vice President Kamala Harris, this is a racist country. D.C. has one of the highest incarceration rates of any city in America, has more police per capita than any city in America, and America has the largest prison system of the entire world. Clearly, those are not the answers. We need to address the root causes of crime and violence. And some of the bills that are threatening us right now is that they're trying to make a maximum age for youth offenders from 24 to 18. They want to lower the juveniles' age to be tried as adults from 16 to 14. They want to lower the requirements for police to be engaged in car chases, even though deaths have been caused by that. And then finally, they want to have the president appoint our judges, even though there's a backlog of them appointing our judges now. So the reality is this. There are metrics in place that creates crime and violence. The average child denied of 4 nutrients are more prone to violent behavior by 51%. Who lives in food deserts? We are creating monsters. We need to address the root causes of crime and violence.
All right, next question. We'll start with Candidate Freeman and work our way down. Candidate Freeman, 60 seconds. What role should the federal government play in supporting economic recovery in D.C. in light of federal layoffs, decreased use of office space, affordability concerns, among other changes?
I think the first thing we need to address is the area median income that decides housing in the city. D.C. Has a metric that's flawed in the area of the AMI. Not only is 3 of the wealthiest counties in the country in the configuration of what's affordable inside D.C., but Loudoun County is the wealthiest country in the country is in that. I think we need to take the HUD guideline that stipulates that no one should be paying more than 30% of their income in housing plus utilities. I want to make that a law. That's currently a metric for financing for mortgages and what have you, but it's not a cap on housing costs. And I also think we need to ban private equity from owning homes. These are things that we need to be doing right now, and the federal government could play a role in that. I will work on that.
Mr. Holbrook.
So the first thing the federal government needs to do is it needs to stop firing our federal employees illegally. So let's be clear, what DOJ has done was not legal, it was not constitutional, and I worked with Congressman Norton fighting it every single day. And what we need to do is we need to rehire these people who were illegally fired and give them back pay as well. I worked for her the entire time working on federal employee issues. So I worked on those issues with DOJ. I worked, for example, to get back pay after government shutdowns. I worked on federal employee retirement issues, making sure they had full benefits that they deserved, and so many other things. And that is a crucial part of this position, is knowing what federal employees need. I've been a federal employee myself. I was in the executive branch at several different agencies. And so I think having that background is really crucial, and knowing how Congress works and how you can deliver on those things is vital for this position.
Candidate Yaxo.
Yeah, so I guess I would say I don't accept the premise of the question. I think we do need to bring these jobs back. We need to restore the federal government, both the jobs and the dignity. This is not going to be an easy process because tremendous damage has been done. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people have left the government. Many took the illegal voluntary offer from DOJ. So it's going to take a concerted effort to rebuild the desire of young people to want to go into the government, as well as to try and recapture some of that lost expertise. So having run an agency, it is one of the #1 issues that I will focus on, both in the role in the Oversight Committee to help educate members on that committee as well as across the entire House, what the federal government does on a daily basis and how vital those workers are to the to the United States. They serve this country and have served admirably for the entire existence of our federal bureaucracy, yet in recent years they have been denigrated, and I will help restore that dignity and bring those jobs back.
Candidate Pinto.
Well, it is vital that our next congressional delegate be laser focused on affordability and ensuring our residents can stay and afford to live here. I want to do that in 3 ways. First, want to ensure that we provide those jobs back to as many of those federal workers who have been, and I agree, illegally laid off, and provide them with back pay. Our public service is so core to who we are as Washingtonians, and we need to make sure that we honor that work and that people have the right to continue in their job and earn the pay that they worked for. Second, We need to pass my Breaking Ground DC housing plan, which has dozens of interventions in it, everything from making it easier to build home, to deducting your rent from taxation, to creating credits for home ownership,
15 seconds.
making it easier to build higher and denser around the city. And third, we have to diversify our economy. While we love that we have so many fantastic federal workers in the city, we also have to invite in new industries in health and tech and AI and ensure that those industries hire our residents. And those are the three things I'll do year one.
Candidate White.
Our congressional delegate will have more to do with our economic stability and job growth in DC for the foreseeable future than any other elected official in DC. If you have been to the Wharf, Navy Yard, Hill East, Walter Reed, St. Elizabeth East, then you have seen the tens of thousands of housing units and jobs that have been created through the delegate's office. I'm going to continue that work, starting with LaFont Plaza and working from there. We're going to push, along with regional members of Congress that I know very well, to get funding to restabilize our economies. When the federal government closes a military base because they lose thousands of jobs, the federal government gives them a pile of cash to restabilize their economies. We're going to use that precedent to get funding to restabilize our economy. And then we're going to take a page out of Puerto Rico's book and utilize programs like Act 60 to create federal tax incentives to relocate private businesses here so that we can regrow those jobs we've lost. And then we're going to fight like hell to restore the federal jobs as well.
Candidate Zelezny.
DC is undergoing a full frontal assault on our economy and at the hands of the Trump administration. And I maintain that it is not an accident, that it is a deliberate racist attack on the black middle class that DC fostered and helped prosper like nowhere else in the country. And I think Trump looks at our city and he sees things he hates. And he waged a full frontal assault on us. So here's how we fight back. First, sure, we want to rehire those federal workers as soon as we can, but they don't have time to wait. We need to reskill and retrain and actively support their efforts to find new jobs in this city before we lose them entirely.
15 seconds.
And then, yes, we have to diversify our economy. We learned the hard way that we're a company town and the company hates us. And we can't wait and we can't depend on them. But I am the only one in this race with actual senior executive business experience. I know how to create jobs. I know the companies we need to bring here, and I'm committed to doing that for our city.
I want to move on to Brooke Pinto. You had a very short 15-second comment to make.
Well, I had a 30-second rebuttal.
Make it 50.
Okay. So respectfully, I agree with Councilmember White that this job is an important messaging job, but you can't do that when you have consistently taken votes that are so bad for business. One of the only votes to oppose the commander's deal, which supports our local DC businesses and thousands of units of housing, voting to raise taxes on a repeated basis, voting against common sense measures that would bring those jobs here. The thing that's most important for jobs is predictability in the marketplace, and this messenger and our records have to be relevant to that analysis.
You have forced me to cause Councilmember White to respond.
Yes, you have. Thank you. So I was going to be quiet when you spoke about the importance of affordable housing earlier, when the reason I voted against commanders is because they would not commit to affordable housing on a timeline. And people being priced out of my city is important enough to vote against a stadium deal that wasn't in our best interest. I was quiet when you talked about Secure DC. Didn't mention that stop and frisk and all these other anti-civil rights measures were also in there. So let's be clear about records. Don't bring it up if you don't want to have the conversation.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to rebut that.
And I'm going to rebut that rebuttal.
You got 10 seconds.
There is absolutely no stop and frisk in Secure DC, and you know that. Second, the commander's deal has 6,000 new units of housing and a requirement that 1/3 of those be affordable. Process is already underway, and so that's just untrue.
Okay, that's it.
Oh.
Your turn. My turn? Higher education. How can Congress, no, let me do higher education. DC TAG has been a critical pathway to higher education for DC residents. So what would you do on the federal level to protect and expand this program? Come on, Frida.
You know, Amita, you answer the question you want to answer. Let me go back and say that I attended a conference last week with Senator Bernie Sanders. Artificial intelligence does not create jobs. I want people to understand that. They had predicted that we're going to lose millions of jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. So anyone telling you otherwise has been disingenuous. And also, it is consuming more water than the bottled water industry. Your utility rates are going to go up. We need to address the fact that it has a 20% chance to end humanity. This is what was said at the Bernie Sanders conference on the existential threat of AI. I want to make sure that everyone was aware of that. This is a public service announcement. So we need to make sure, while we're talking about our kids, AI is here, and we need to address it. And I think that everyone in here should make sure that you are prepared, because without a guaranteed income, a lot more people are going to be unemployed, and we need to address this existential threat now.
Trent Holbrook, DC Tag.
I'm very glad you asked about that. I started working on DC tag issues on day one when I started working with Congresswoman Norton, and through our hard effort, and it was a lot of work, we just recently we were able to increase DC tag awards by 50%, taking it from $10,000 per year to $15,000 per year. So that was incredible success, and we did so in a Republican Congress, delivering a huge victory for DC. DC tag has been such an incredible program throughout the years, and one of the reasons that we got it was because we saw a lot of people leaving DC because it's too expensive, and this was a great way to keep DC families in DC. And so I'm very proud of the work that we did, increasing that 50%.
Greg Yasko.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this goes back, I think, to one of the issues about exempting DC residents or withholding federal income taxes. I think this is a program that would best be addressed ultimately through local DC funding. And when we withhold that $30 billion that we're sending to the federal government, we can control that better and use those funds better within the district. Higher education funding is a significant problem in this country. I'm not sure that, I work a lot in higher education, I'm not sure that we have a clear answer on the challenges, but higher education is extremely important still for people as a pathway to economic success. So one advantage of keeping those tax dollars in the district is that we have the ability ultimately to spend those resources in ways that are more important, and we don't have to depend upon the Congress to decide how much tuition assistance we can give to residents in the district.
Brooke Pinto.
Well, I want to give Congresswoman Norton a huge shout out for what she was able to do in building a bipartisan coalition to create and expand DC tag in the amazing way that she has. And that's an important part of this legacy that we absolutely have to build on to ensure that our students have the ability to go to college throughout the country. We also need to do more to support our local universities and colleges as well. That's why I have a bill all around apprenticeships, which I partnered with UDC on, the Consortium of Universities, Georgetown, GW, Catholic, Gallaudet, and I'm sure I'm missing some. But we ensure, and part of the program is to pay for all of the expenses for high growth industry licensing in healthcare and childcare and tech and construction management.
15 seconds.
And all of your living expenses are paid for so long as you work for a DC businesses for 2 years after graduation. And those are efforts that we need to continue to do to support our residents, support our universities, and support a growing and evolving economy for opportunities for everyone.
Robert White.
I had the privilege of working on DC tag with Congresswoman Norton as well, and that's one of the reasons I know that even though this great accomplishment of increasing it by 50%, which is great, it is nowhere near the measure by which the cost of higher education has gone up. So not only am I going to fight to keep increasing DC tag for our DC residents, because I have generations of family members who have started college and not finished. And that is a common story in the District of Columbia and for many families like mine. But I'm also going to fight on the national level for things that I understand. The Department of Education right now is working to limit the amount of money that they will give in government loans for advanced degrees. I teach as an adjunct at Georgetown Law School, and when the Department of Education finishes its work, you won't be able to pay half of your tuition for 1 year at schools like Georgetown Law or GW, and that is not fair. So we have a big fight on our hands, and we need to make sure we have real fighters who understand these issues in a real way.
Kenny Zalesny.
I'm a huge fan of DC TAG. It's done tremendous things for so many families across the district. I just had a great conversation with Don Graham and with former Virginia Congressman Tom Davis, who were Congresswoman Norton's partners in creating that program. And one of the concerns I know that Congresswoman Norton had originally was that a program like that would weaken places like UDC. And I am so delighted that that they worked out a way to ensure that this university was still able to grow and flourish and thrive, even when many DC students were leaving this city to go to college. But there is more to do to protect and strengthen this university. There's more to do to expand and develop the DC TAG program so that more people can benefit for longer. And there's more to do to expand, to restore the support for higher education across the country.
Okay, so given what we saw on the Frederick Douglass Bridge, I think this is a very appropriate question. We'll start with candidate Zelezny. 60 seconds. What role would you play in discussions on Capitol Hill regarding war powers and foreign policy?
Okay, so this war in Iran is completely indefensible. The violation, the president's overreach in taking our country to war without any consultation with Congress, let alone any approval under the War Powers Act, is a travesty. It's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and it will make us less safe in the long run, and it is driving up all of our costs, from gasoline to everything else that flows from that assault to our economy. It was foolish, it was dangerous, it was unplanned, it was unstrategic,
15 seconds.
And we are all paying the price. And as a member of Congress, I will shout loudly with the Democrats that we cannot let our president overreach in that manner. It's made us less safe, and he will be remembered as the president who made the world less safe.
Candidate White.
I think this is where we learn who's going to be a civil rights leader in Congress. I'm sad about the cost of gas too, but I'm really sad about the hundreds of little girls that lost their lives in the school that our country bombed, that our president bombed. I'm sad about the elderly people and the children in Gaza who are losing their lives, and I'm going to say something about it in Congress because it is a national and international issue. And if we can't say it as candidates, we are surely not going to say it as members of Congress. And we can't expect anybody to hear the plight of DC residents being disenfranchised if we don't have one thing to say about innocent lives being lost overseas, especially when the action comes illegally from the President of the United States.
Candidate Pinto.
The only reasonable way to protect the world is through our strong alliances. And that's where this position, despite not having a final vote on the House floor, can be an instrumental partner in rebuilding the alliances that President Trump has broken, has shattered, and continues to disparage on a daily basis. There are innocent lives that have been lost and that will continue to be lost until this Congress stands up to the president. I don't care what party the members of Congress are. They all have an obligation to push back and to ensure that their constitutional right as a co-equal branch of government is honored and that we do not continue these senseless, violent, illegal wars that are undermining not only people's safety and rights around the world, they're undermining our reputation across the world, and it will take decades to rebuild the harms to our alliances, and that is an important role of DC's representative to Congress.
Candidate Yaxo.
Well, I appreciate this question because we do talk a lot about local DC issues, and the role is a national role. The delegate has a responsibility to engage on issues beyond just those issues that are impacting directly the district. I have worked across the government as an expert in nuclear policy. I've worked across the world as an expert, so I'm very familiar with dealing with foreign countries and dealing with issues of foreign policy. I will say on this issue, and I think Robert is exactly right to point out, thousands of people have lost their lives in this illegal war. And I think we talk a lot about how Trump is doing things illegally, but we don't take the next logical step, which is when a president takes illegal actions repeatedly, whether it is cutting off aid to cutting off USAID, which is created or caused deaths across the world from withholding legally appropriated funds, and starts illegal wars and abuses the district, we need to talk about impeachment. And I will introduce, if others do not, articles of impeachment against the president. It is an obligation of the Congress to take this act, and we need to finally do it.
Let the record show that this candidate praised another candidate. Who knew?
Sorry, say it.
Said, let the record show that this candidate praised another candidate.
It's just because he's bald.
He's not the only.
Oh, sorry. Well, I will praise you too at some point.
But you were wearing a cap, that's why you didn't notice.
Well, thank you. Let's be clear. The war in Iran right now is illegal, and this member of Congress needs to stand up and fight against the war just like every single other member. We have 700,000 residents of D.C. We're the equal of every other congressional district in the country and of every other state. And this shows yet again why we need D.C. statehood. Our residents have fought and died in every single American war, going all the way back to the American Revolution. And there's no reason that our 700,000 residents should not have a vote on whether to go to war, whether to fund war, and all these critically important issues that are the decisive issues of our time. I also worked on military issues with Congressman Norton. I dealt a lot with the District of Columbia National Guard. I did things like making sure that they didn't have their pay clawed back, which the administration has tried to do. And so this role is critically important in protecting those members who have seen horrible things since the president has done things like having them pick up trash on the National Mall, because that's what the president thinks the priority for the D.C. Guard should be. I disagree, and this position needs to stand up for it, and it's why we need the District of Columbia Home Rule Act, National Guard Home Rule Act.
Candidate Freeman.
This war was started by apartheid Israel. The D.C. Thank you. John Wilson building was lit up with the Israeli flag. What does Israel get? They get more funding than any other country, foreign aid than any other country in the world. They get more funding than Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America combined with your federal tax dollars. And what do you get for that? Israel has free health care. The number one cause of medical debt, number one cause of bankruptcy in America is medical debt. They got subsidized housing. We have a housing crisis here. They have subsidized student higher education. We have student loan debt. You're paying for things for them to have that you don't have here. If you want to stop the war, then we have to stop the funding. They are making hands over fists, and we have the largest concentration of defense weapons contractors right here. They're one of the largest lobbyists in Congress. I just think it's like 2 to 1. So that's what we need to start, because as Alexander Hay, you can march all you want as long as you continue to pay your taxes.
Okay, this is going to be the last question before you make your final statements. And I'll start with Kamon Freeman and move to his left. If you are elected, how should DC residents measure your rate of success after 2 years?
Well, in the words of the late, great John Lewis, if I don't get into some good trouble, then I was a failure. And I don't think anyone else is up here, other than one bald guy that supports tax resistance, that's willing to get into good trouble. So when we say that by any means necessary, I mean by any means necessary. Otherwise, we are selling ourselves short. And I think that one of the things that we need to do is recognize that the fact is that we are in conflict with the federal government. We have a colonial relationship with the federal government. In order to challenge that relationship, nothing else is even possible. And I have to say this again in defense of Eleanor Holmes Norton's legacy. It's disrespectful to make the claim that you are somehow going to be able to do what she was unable to do for 37 years of service. And for anyone to say otherwise is facetious and disrespectful. But in that 2 years, good trouble will be spread across the land. I think that we will have to have a coming to Jesus moment where, and I think Johnny Cochran said it right here in Washington, D.C., the best way to air your grievances against the federal government is to withhold the income taxes. You will keep 20 to 30% of your income in your pocket in those 2 years, and if you don't do it, I'll do it for you.
Let me say on behalf of Kenny Zalesny and Trent Holbrook and Brooke Pinto, baldness is not a qualification for this office, necessarily. On to Trent Holbrook.
Thank you for that, particularly. So metrics
Can I
are.
rebut that? I'm sorry.
So metrics are critically important. And every year that I was working with Congressman Norton, we made advance after advance after advance on all these critical issues. We got record number of co-sponsors on the DC statehood bill. We moved the statehood bill to House passage. We created new mile marker after mile marker after mile marker. We introduced more bills, Congressman Norton did, than any other member of Congress to show exactly where she stood on these issues. So the way that you should judge the member of Congress, whoever gets elected, is what did they do? Do they have allies in Congress like we built over the time that I was there? Did they use every opportunity they could to advance DC home rule, DC statehood like we did? Did you use horrible things that might happen that are bad, like what Trump does with the National Guard to pass the District of Columbia National Guard Home Rule Act? Use those types of things and measure it just like we've done with Congressman Norton. She was consistently ranked as one of the most effective Democratic lawmakers in Congress, if not the most effective, and it's because we knew how to use the legislative process to deliver for DC.
Time.
Greg Yasko.
So as I've worked in government, one of the criteria I've learned is that it's very important to have key goals, and it's very important to make progress on those goals, and it's fair for people to hold you accountable. So the goals that I will work to achieve in the first 2 years, and I don't think all of these are possible, but these are the goals that I want to be measured against. Number one is, as my other good bald friend says, we need to exempt DC residents from paying federal income taxes. I think that is a measurable step that can reignite our efforts on statehood. So that is an area in which people can hold me accountable if I'm not successful or I don't make a strong enough effort on that issue. The other issue that I think is incredibly important is dealing with electricity rates and the cost of living crisis in the district. That is a measurable action where I can make measurable progress in 2 years. That is number one, by reinvigorating our investments in renewable energy and also making it easier to convert to a public power authority. The third is very specific metrics around the disparities that continue in this city. One, I think one of the best ones to look at is the life expectancy gap between Ward 7 and 8 and Ward 3. Right now it's about 15 years. I want to get that down to at least 10 years in 2 years. Those are three things that I think people can judge me against.
Brooke Pinto.
Well, there's this great line in West Wing where the woman playing the head of the National Organization of Women says, one of the great things about America is every 2 years we get to legally overthrow the government. And that's what the House of Representatives is. And so I'm going to do the same thing that I've done my whole career, is look you all as our voters in the eye and make you a series of promises that I'm going to deliver on. Just like I did when a mother asked me not to rest easy at night until we drive down gun violence, who lost 2 of her sons to gun violence. Just like I did when I looked small businesses in the eye who said they were having such a difficulty getting licensed and opening their doors when we passed the BEST Act to revitalize our business process. Just like I did to the young child who was struggling learning how to read to revitalize our literacy training processes, now making us fastest improving in the country. So I want to improve your lives. I want to make it more affordable to live here. I want to ensure that everybody's safe. I want to protect our democracy. And if you don't like what I've done, no problem, vote me out in 2 years.
Robert White.
First, in defense of baldness, I had hair when I went into Eleanor Norton's office, and I had none when I came out. So Eleanor Norton took my hair. Look, by the end of my first term in Congress, 2 years, you will see, or you should push me out, real momentum toward DC statehood. You should see, or you should push me out, DC residents mobilizing into the districts of the people who want to oppress us and keep us further away from democracy. Within my first 2 years in Congress, I'm going to put DC on a path to economic stability using the ideas that I talked to you about today. Land transfers that we have done before, using Congresswoman Norton's blueprint, but bringing new ideas as well to reinvigorate our downtown, to build back those jobs that we have lost in the federal government. So you are going to see tangible benefits to your lives, and that is my commitment as your next delegate to Congress.
Kenny Zelesny.
I wish you had made the timeline 4 years, not because I think I'm entitled to 2 terms, but because it's going to take until Trump is gone to know if we properly laid the groundwork in the first 2 years. But in those first two years, I will prepare us for a Democratic president by building the relationships, the allies, and the partners across Capitol Hill who are ready to deliver us statehood once we have a Democratic president. And then on the economic front, you should hold me accountable for for rebuilding our economy from the top down and the bottom up. So for bringing new businesses here, because I've worked in them and I know how to do it, including despite the threat from AI, I know how to get us what's good about AI and avoid what is catastrophic. And from the bottom up, we need to build and invest in our startup tech scene so that the job creators don't just come from elsewhere, they're homegrown right here. So everyone in our city can be employed, and the employers too are homegrown in our city. Hold me accountable for those things. If I don't do them, vote me out, please.
All right, we are coming down to the wire. It's time for closing statements. We'll start with candidate Zelesny and work our way down. Each of y'all have 60 seconds to make your case, please.
Okay, thank you all for this terrific conversation. There are only 16 full-time elected positions in the city of Washington, D.C. There are the 13 members of D.C. Council, there's the mayor, the attorney general, and there's the delegate. And all of us have to work together to defend D.C.'s rights and advance our interests. If you like the members of D.C. Council who are in this race, keep them on D.C. Council. They will still be part of the Sweet 16. But for this particular job, this one singular congressional national representative, I ask you please to send someone to that position who has for 30 years been fighting for DC on the national stage and winning. I'm the only one in the race who has fought in the private sector, the public sector, the nonprofit sector, and brought this city new outside resources and lasting positive results. And I will be number one on the ballot on June 16th. I'll be easy to spot. Please rank me number one. Thank you.
Candidate White.
Thank you all again for being here this evening. This is a historic transition in a historic time. These aren't normal times. This is a time where Donald Trump is in the White House. This is a time where the norms that we have lived through for decades are being thrown out the window. This is a time that demands a fighter. Somebody who understands what's at stake because he's lived them, not because he's read a report or read a book or took a good class. This is somebody who has worked for the Congresswoman Norton, who has been elected by residents across this entire city, who has been endorsed in this race by Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, our Labor Council, and Free DC, because they know who the fighter is that is ready to take that torch right now. I'm asking for your vote because we can't elect somebody who is going to learn the seat, who is going to learn the city. We need someone who is there with a fire on day one to represent our city in this time, in this day, save this democracy, and make this great city the 51st state. And I'm asking for your vote to do that.
Candidate Pinto.
Well, thank you all again so much for being here tonight and coming out tonight to be a part of our democracy. We are the best city in the world, and the people of DC are special and incredible, and you deserve the best. You deserve progress on issues that we're experiencing right now, from affordability to public safety to Donald Trump treating our city with the disrespect and vilification that we've never experienced before. You deserve real wins on those issues. Yes, you should have a fighter. But you should have someone who's not just going to fight for the sake of it, who's going to fight and deliver and ensure that we make progress on these goals. I don't have to build new relationships. I have been building these relationships across the country my entire life. I'm so proud to have the endorsement of Senator Alsobrooks, one of our strongest regional allies, to protect and stand with DC. I work with all of these members now in the House and the Senate to protect our city. I'm ready to keep doing it, and I ask for your vote on June 16th and 1 week from tonight, when every voter will receive mail-in ballots.
Well, again, my name is Greg Yatsko, and I am running because I think I am the best person to fill this role. I have a lifetime that has been dedicated to working for others. I worked on Capitol Hill for many years to help a representative and then a senator protect the rights of their constituents in their states. I ran the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for 3.5 years, where I fought some of the most powerful industries in this country who wanted to harm and not protect the safety of Americans across the entire country. I'll take that same dedication, that same effort to learning about the issues, to building relationships, whether it was stopping the Yucca Mountain nuclear waste repository in Nevada. I can build those coalitions, and I know how to do it. I've done it my whole career.
15 seconds.
And I will ultimately work to make sure that the district becomes a city that is not a tale of two cities anymore, but it is one city where we have equal opportunity for everyone across it. And I look forward to doing that, and I encourage you to rank me number one, or vote for me number one and rank me number two, or rank me number two, I should say, on June 16th. Thank you.
Candidate Holbrook.
Thank you again for hosting this event. Thank you to everybody for being here. Elections are about contrasts, and the contrast in this race could not be clearer. I know how to deliver for DC at the federal level because I've done it. This position is not like any other in government. It's not like any other member of Congress, since you're fighting for our autonomy and for statehood. And it's definitely not like a DC council position where you're only working with fellow Democrats on local issues. This is working with 435 full House members and 100 senators, including Republicans and even moderate Democrats, who will do everything that they can to overturn our laws and stop our progress. I led the efforts in Congresswoman Norton's office to pass a DC statehood bill for the first time in American history. I fought every single anti-home rule attack for the better part of a decade. I fought to protect our federal employees, and I've been a federal employee in the executive branch of government. I led the effort to increase DC tag awards by 50%. I fought to have our residents in the Federal Bureau of Prisons be located near DC in safe facilities and with the necessary programming to help them with their reentry. I know how to deliver for DC at the federal level because I've done it. The time right now is too important for politics as usual. I'm the only candidate in this race with a serious, necessary federal experience to deliver for DC on day one. Thank you.
Candidate Freeman.
The last word. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes-Norton and I have something in common. We share the same mentor, Dr. Dorothy Irving Height. And Dr. Height used to say that if the time is not ripe, we must ripen the time. There's over $2 million in fundraising campaign funds on this stage, none of which went to me. And I want to point something out, that folks in their elected offices oftentimes are having to capitulate to corporate interests and mainstream political interests in order to secure the finances to get into networks that get them elected, while delivering only, for the most part, symbolic victories to the masses. They are merely mascots for the political and economic interests of corporate power. And until folks are clear about undermining the way in which the corporate sector essentially is able to curate folks that come before our community, that become elected officials in a still majority working class city, we are merely rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. I'm asking you to do something different. I'm in a general election in November, and in the spirit of Hilda Mason, I hope to see you there.
Can we hear it for all of our candidates? And can Kamon Freeman explain why he's wearing two hats? You brought a cap on your head and you got another cap in front of you.
Well, my brother Robert White has the endorsement of a new organization of Free DC who's doing good work, but I have the endorsement of the original Free DC and Anise Jenkins, so we wanted to shout
Hence
that
the
out.
caps, okay.
Yeah. Two thinking caps.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Andrew Flegel, President and CEO of your Consortium of Universities, and on behalf of the over 300,000 college students in our region and the over 100,000 college students here in DC, I want to welcome you once again here to the University of the District of Columbia, the nation's only urban land-grant university, currently celebrating its 175th anniversary, and I can think of few better ways to memorialize that important occasion than this important forum tonight. Kojo, Sam, thank you so much for moderating. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank them with me. I want to thank our partners at the League of Women Voters, and I also want to send out a special thanks to Delta Sigma Theta Sorority for all their volunteers and help with tonight's event. Candidates, please. For all of you in the audience and all of you online candidates, this is an extraordinary moment for our city. It is an incredible act of bravery to stand for an election at a moment like this. We are grateful to all of you for your willingness to be here, but for your commitment to our community. And regardless of how this election goes, we are grateful for your efforts and look forward to you all continuing to work on behalf of our community. With that, I want to turn things over
I just
to
want to
my...
give a shout out, since this is my alma mater, please forgive me. I want to invite everybody to me and Stevie Wonder's birthday party next Wednesday, May the 13th and 14th in U. Hope to see you there.
There we go. Go Firebirds. All right, and with that, I also want to again thank our partners at the League of Women Voters and welcome my partner in sponsoring tonight's event, Barbara Zia, who will spend a few minutes walking you through a little bit of information on ranked choice voting. And with that, candidates, if you want to take the moment to hit the green room and grab a water or refresh, we will do so. Moderators, thank you again. And Barbara, I'll turn the mic over to you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Andrew. And I'd like to give a special acknowledgement to our Candidates Forum Planning Committee. And their names should appear on the screen. Mandu Kumbola Frazier with the Consortium, who chaired our planning team. Juanita Gray, who ably led the UDC team. Rob Duffy with the Consortium, and Pam Wessling with the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nationwide grassroots nonprofit dedicated to empowering voters and protecting our democracy. For over 100 years, the League in DC has worked tirelessly for the cause of racial equality and integration, full voting rights, autonomy and statehood for DC, and voter engagement through education, increased registration, and turnout. Elections this year in DC may be the most consequential ones we have had in decades. The primary election is June the 16th, and the general is November the 3rd. Here in DC, we have lots of options for how to vote. But first of all, you need to be registered to vote, and you can do that up to and on election day. And our league volunteers are here outside the theater to help you do just that. The Board of Elections begins mailing primary election ballots to registered voters next week. So if you're registered, look for your ballot in the mail. This year, voters in DC are going to use ranked choice voting for the first time. So why are we using ranked choice voting? First of all, it's the law in DC. In 2024, DC voters in all 8 wards overwhelmingly supported RCV via Initiative 83. And last year, the DC Council provided funding to start using RCV in 2026. And just in a nutshell, how does RCV work? In order to win, a candidate has to get over 50% of the votes cast for that office. Voters can rank up to 5 candidates according to their preference for each DC office on the ballot, other than for political party offices. This only applies to races with 3 or more candidates on the ballot. So you vote for your favorite candidate first, then you rank your backup choices, second, third, and so on. If your first choice comes in last place, your vote moves to your next choice, and this process repeats until one candidate gets a majority of the votes and is declared the winner. So what does RCV offer? It gives more choices for voters. It ensures that winners earn majority support. It encourages positive campaigning and gives more voters a say in the outcome. And it also mirrors how people already rank preferences in their daily life. After the forum, please visit our voter information table outside where our volunteers can show you how RCV works on a sample ballot. And we urge you to visit vote411.org, the League of Women Voters nonpartisan website, for all election-related information you need. You can see what's on your ballot, register to vote, check your registration. And the vote411.org voter guide to candidates on the ballot is live now. It provides information on the candidates running for every office and where they stand on key issues. And this is critical in this election when we voters are going to be ranking candidates on the ballot according to their preference. Thanks again to all the candidates for running for this important office and for helping make democracy work. And we invite you to visit their booths just outside the theater and enjoy refreshments. Thank you.